What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Sexton Sobriety. Today, I want to talk about cannabis in recovery, or Cali sober. So let's get right into it. There are two different types of people out there, in my opinion. So there's people that will use cannabis and it doesn't cause any issues. They can use it moderately and it doesn't inflame any sort of craving for other substances. Then there are people that they will use cannabis and it makes them want to do their drug of choice, like heroin, meth, coke, pills, like, dude, alcohol, like straight up. And so the same thing applies to like alcohol. They'll drink alcohol and then it's like, oh, I'm off the rails. Like I want to do coke and I want to do whatever. But let's just focus on cannabis right now. So I'm sure there's other experiences, but I'm saying for the most part, those are the two prominent things to look at. So I would say the tricky thing is that if you're stable in your recovery, then it's like, well, hold on. Do I want to put myself at risk of possibly having cravings for my drug of choice and then potentially doing it? You know what I'm saying? So that's the kind of dilemma here. But ultimately, I just wanted to say, like, people have questions about, like, could it work for me? I can't say that, I can't say that. And I'm not someone who's going to sit here and demonize it and say, oh, no, if you're going to go off the rails, you're going to fucking relapse and it's going to ruin your life. No, I'm not going to do that either. But I will say that if you're already somewhat stable in your recovery, there's no reason to test the waters and to mess that up. So that's my honest opinion. When it comes to like the morality or like if it's right or wrong, like, no, I don't think that there's anything wrong about using cannabis in recovery. But let me specify what I mean by that. So cannabis in recovery would mean that you are actually actively in recovery. So it's not just that you're like, white knuckling or like, not drinking or using. It's that you are actively working on yourself in recovery and you're utilizing cannabis as a plant medicine in an accountable way. So there's a clear difference between that and like, maybe you quit drinking or whatever, and then now you're just smoking mad weed or, you know what I mean? Or like taking, fat dabs all day. So that's a different story. Do I think that can be also a form of harm reduction? Yeah, I do. So it's all kind of tricky, but ultimately, like I said, it comes down to, does it work for you? And are you actively working on yourself in recovery? That's just my standard, okay? So look, let's talk about some of the pitfalls that could potentially come up for people that are utilizing cannabis in their recovery. So the first one, like I just basically explained, is if they're not actively working on themselves. They're not doing what they need to do. They're not being open and honest. They're not addressing their past. They're not, integrating new coping skills. So if it's like all the reliance goes on to cannabis, to me, that is an issue. Another thing is that people can kind of develop an unhealthy thing with it to where they're viewing it as like, oh, this is like all I have left. So, I'm going to go hard on it. And then that can contribute to like, lack of regulation, even things like spending too much money on it and stuff like that. So that could be sketchy to where it's like you're prioritizing that maybe over basic needs and stuff. And that does happen. You know what I mean? And so here's another thing is for some people, even after using it, consistently, it can inflame dormant things and even cause psychosis for people. So that is a potential issue that could come up, especially if you're someone who is dual diagnosis. So you not only have substance use disorder, but you have other mental health stuff. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Ultimately, I think that it's important to be very, very careful if you also are taking medication of any sort. So if you're taking a medication, an antidepressant, a mood stabilizer, SSRIs, MAOI, any type of like psych meds really, then it's like you definitely, I would say it would not be advisable to consume cannabis as well. A lot of people want to consume cannabis when they're on other meds because it like seemingly helps with like lack of appetite or like other side effects that come from the medication. But I think it's more important to not cover up those side effects and to actively address those side effects with your doctor. So that's my honest opinion. Also, let's talk about just people who it turns into like an unhealthy obsession. Okay, that could also happen for people that are actively trying to use it as a plant medicine. It becomes like a huge like talking point of everything, and like it's just this weird obsession. And honestly, I have my own judgments about that. But ultimately, if it's actually helping, then it doesn't matter if you're talking about it a lot. You know what I mean? It's like, I talk a lot, so I have no room to judge that. So yeah, basically, I think it's really important to look at, a couple other things as well. So when you're evaluating if you have an unhealthy relationship with cannabis, it's important to look at, can you moderate? Like, do you have the ability to moderate? And what is moderation? Okay. for me, I would say a high standard of moderation would be to only consume cannabis occasionally on weekends. And when I say occasionally, not every single weekend, literally every other weekend or even less. You know what I mean? I would say that would be a really healthy way, in my personal opinion, to consume cannabis. If you want to go a little bit, less hardcore, then I would say occasionally at night. So, and then if you want to go even, less of a like crazy standard, I would say just only at night. So in my personal opinion, if you are not a cancer patient, if you are not someone with chronic illness, I don't really see the point in consuming cannabis in the morning. I'm sorry. I think that it kind of like takes away you don't have a baseline consciousness. You're only under the influence of cannabis, and I just don't think that's necessarily healthy. But that's just my opinion. So when it comes to moderation in general, we have to figure out, can you moderate? And then you do that by trying to moderate. That's the thing. And so the thing is that I could moderate with some things and not others. I'll be completely honest. I could moderate with stimulants like cocaine, methamphetamines. I could moderate. I would literally consume it, not to a ridiculous degree for a night, and then I wouldn't do it for a long time. When it came to opiates and benzos and Ambien and like all this other stuff, I could not moderate at all. So I'm not someone who thinks, if you're an addict, there's no way that you can moderate anything and all that type of bullshit. But I would say, when it comes to our drugs of choice, when it comes to things that we're compulsively taking, there is usually an inability to moderate at all. And then if there is, it's like this weird control thing where it's like you're trying to control it, you're trying to not do it. And that's different than just not doing it. You know what I mean? Like if it's like a focus to where you're like, I'm not doing it. I had one and I'm just going to have one. And then it's just this like, it ruins it basically. So, but let's focus on just cannabis, okay? So, look, as a whole, I support cannabis. I just think that, a lot of the conversations are lacking in accountability. So I just wanted to share my opinion on it. I'm in full support of Cali Sober. I'm in full support in people that consume cannabis in a healthy way. And I'm in full support if you have an unhealthy relationship. I'm in full support of you as well, as long as you are not contributing to the negatives by saying that there's no such thing as cannabis addiction and that there's no such thing as withdrawal. You know what I mean? So that's my take on it today. Much love. Y'all be easy.